Speaker of the House of Representatives, Juliet Holness, has relented to incessant pressure for her to share the opinions given to her by the Attorney General and the Legislative Council, which informed her decision about how Parliament will treat with reports submitted to it from the Attorney General, from the Auditor General's Department, and the Integrity Commission. If you thought that that has now settled the matter, you are wrong, because there are still dueling opinions about the soundness of the guidance given and, of course, Mrs. Holness's interpretation of same. I've invited an attorney at law onto the program this evening to try to wade through the various issues so that you can have an understanding of the issues and then form an opinion on which side you come down on. This is Lead Story. The topic is on the table. I'm ready. You're here. Let's start the show. Good evening, this is Lead Story here on CVM TV. My name is George Davis. My guests this evening, Shane Dalling. He's an attorney at law, lecturer in Constitution and Statutory Interpretation. You also know him as the Chief Executive Officer of the Firearm Licensing Authority, but he's not here in that capacity. He's here purely as an attorney at law and, of course, a man who shapes the minds of the next wave of attorneys to graduate through the Norman Manley Law School. Welcome.
Thank you, George Davis.
Good. All right. Before we go into the issues, though, it is needful for me to remind the viewers of what the House Speaker said in November last year when this matter came to a head, the matter of how reports from the Integrity Commission and the Auditor General's Department would be handled in the Parliament going forward. Recall that this was a legacy issue from the time of Mrs. Holness's predecessor as House Speaker, Marissa Dalrymple-Philibert, who made the initial moves to the authorities I mentioned earlier to get clarity on how such reports should be treated. Mrs. Holness addressed this matter in the House November last year. Let's recall what she said.
If the intention of the Parliament and the legislators at the time was to have all reports tabled immediately, it would have said that. The legislation said table in 31 and 54, subsection 4, in the soonest possible time. When the legislations are passed, it cannot be that we allow persons to think that in obeying the laws we are doing the wrong thing. We cannot cherry pick which laws we obey and which ones we are going to say it is not convenient to obey, so we are going to do something else. And so where we have had these issues, where, and I checked the Hansard, some previous speakers actually make no ruling. They just decide this makes sense and go ahead. I am making an effort to ensure that when history is written, this speaker does what is right in the sight of the law.
Juliet Holness speaking in the House of Representatives November 7 last year. More to the point, she said that reports from the Director of Investigation at the Integrity Commission submitted under Section 54, subsection 4, will be tabled as soon as possible after receipt by the Parliament, having regard to the serious nature of the matters that are contained in said reports, and that it will be requiring the immediate and direct attention of the House. She says after those reports are tabled from the Integrity Commission, they will be then submitted to the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee for their consideration and report. All members of the Integrity Commission, she says, will review the report before the reports are tabled, and it will be tabled soonest thereafter. Then, where the Auditor General's reports are concerned, she said, ruling from the Auditor General's Department on public bodies will be tabled in keeping with the Public Bodies Management Administration Act enacted in 2001 under Section 13A or Section 30 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act enacted 2000, well, in a particular of interest in its amendment from 1992, which recognizes public bodies. Such reports, she said, must be submitted in keeping with the procedure outlined and also provided in Section 13B of that Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, and of course Section 31 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act. Now, I know that all of that is heavy for some people, which is why I've turned to legal expertise to simmer this down for us so we can enjoy it. Now, Counsel, having regard to what the Speaker was advised as a course of action to take, where, let's start with the Integrity Commission first, where the tabling of the documents sent by the Integrity Commission are concerned. Based on the advice she was given and the action she took, was she right?
Okay. Let me first state that there should be no debate in Parliament as to what the law says. That is because the Parliament passed the law. And there's a process by which the enactment of laws takes place in every Parliament across the world.
Yes.
There are joint select committees, there are debates, and persons discuss the legislation. The purpose, the intent of the legislation is within the realm of Parliament. So the parliamentarians themselves know why they pass a law. It is the judges and the lawyers and the citizenry that gets into the debate as to what Parliament truly intended. Even if that is not what Parliament intended, we may, in court, decide that that may be the spirit and the reading of the legislation. But Parliament itself ought not to be debating what they pass. It should be the clearest place it should be, is inside the Parliament. So, in relation to the reports of the Integrity Commission, there are different reports that the Integrity Commission sends. So you have annual reports that the Integrity Commission sends. The rule tells you how to deal with that. Then, further to that, you have investigative reports and how to treat with that. When the Integrity Commission was operationalized, the legislation dealing with that also amended the standing orders of Parliament to tell you how also to treat with the reports coming into Parliament. So it establishes the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee, and it tells you what must be done with certain reports in relation to matters dealing with ethics, or reports on parliamentarians themselves should be sent to the Ethics Committee. That is in the standing orders passed in the law by the parliamentarians. In fact, the Integrity Commission Act specifically stated in it that it amends the standing orders of Parliament. And it sets out what is to be done with those reports specifically. And so there should be clear that there are certain reports that are sent by the Integrity Commission that must be tabled as soon as they are received by the Speaker. And then there are other reports that should be sent to certain committees.
The Ethics Committee one and the Oversight Committee. So just before we go to the break, I wanted to answer the question directly. Based on what Juliet Holness said Parliament would do where handling reports from the Integrity Commission are concerned, and cross-referencing that against the advice she was given, was she in the right in what she said the process would be?
Yes, but I believe, having heard the opinion from the Attorney General on the matter and hearing the Speaker's position on the matter, I believe they were in accord.
No dissonance between what the Speaker did and the guidance she got.
I don't believe
on the matter of the Integrity Commission.
On the matter of the Integrity Commission.
All right, let's leave it right there. Take our first break here on It Leads To. We're talking parliamentary matters, the handling of reports, the advice given to the House Speaker, and whether or not there was dissonance between that guidance and what she subsequently advised the Parliament would be the way forward from the point that she got the advice. Much more after this.
Puts this one on ice.
Look who we have in the cut. No, today episode I got nice. Legends, Senator,
My long-time brethren.
the great All-Star, the King, and the man himself.
Salute!
You know, as man, we're not to go as specialists.
And that's the pinnacle of the problem.
We want some new era.
Do what you love and you never work a day in your life. Lie!
You work till you win.
It was pandemonium. Country people can relate to what I talk about.
What you think about me no matter, you know. What matter to me is what me think about myself.
Man United, you know. I don't care what a man wants to say.
You know, man.
Yeah, man.
You know, man.
You finished?
Yes, we're finished.
The Cut is brought to you by Flo and Guinness.
Hi, I'm Celine Gordon, host of Holy Road.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy John Mark Wigan, host on the show Holy Road. Listen, people need to know what's happening in the churches and in ministry in all of Jamaica. It's an absolute blessing. We're really excited to share this.
Tune in to CVM. See it happen.
Welcome back to Lead Story, talking parliamentary matters and the tabling of reports and how such reports ought to be tabled in accordance with the laws of the land. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Juliet Holness, taking guidance from the Attorney General and, of course, from the Legislative Council to the Houses of Parliament. Now, the Legislative Council told the House Speaker in correspondence dated November 8, 2023, that where the matter of the Integrity Commission is concerned and the tabling of those reports, that the law was silent. That's the phrase used by the Legislative Council. And she said that the Integrity Commission Act provides for circumstances where the Commission must submit reports to Parliament, Section 36.1, 36.2, 36.3, Section 54.4, and that an in-depth assessment of the standing orders of the Houses of Parliament, the Integrity Commission Act, and various correspondence relating to this matter was conducted, and it was found that reports from the Integrity Commission may be submitted to the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee, which Mr. Dalling mentioned in the first segment, either before or after the tabling in Parliament. Now, this is important, folks, because the accusation was that Mrs. Holness was trying to delay the tabling of the reports from the Integrity Commission by sending them to these committees, sending them to the Oversight Committee, sending them to the Ethics Committee, because people felt that once the Integrity Commission sends a report, it should just be tabled in Parliament immediately. And of course, once a document is tabled in Parliament, immediately it becomes public. So she was accused of trying to delay the publication of the contents of those reports by channeling it to these committees. But the Legislative Council, in accordance with what the Attorney General said, is saying that there's nothing wrong in that procedure because the law doesn't prohibit it, nor does the law put a crimp on the ability of the House Speaker to instruct that the reports be handled in that manner. We've set that aside where the Integrity Commission is concerned because that was the easy part. Now to the matter of the Auditor General's reports. And I want to come to Mr. Dalling by saying this. I was struck by point 7 of the advice from the Legislative Council, which she says is in harmony with the advice from the Solicitor General, of course, out of the Attorney General's chambers. And I want to read point 7 for you and then get your perspective. It says, first and foremost, this is the Legislative Council, Mrs. Lee Andrea Wilson. She says, first and foremost, I am in agreement with the Solicitor General's analysis in relation to the rules of interpretation and support her opinion that sections 29 and 30 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act are unambiguous. Indeed, it is clear that Section 29 deals with annual reports and special reports on any matter incidental to their powers and duties under this Act. Now, it's important for me to tell the viewers what really is happening here in case you came in late. Again, the House Speaker was accused of taking advice from the Auditor, from the Attorney General, taking advice from the Legislative Council on how to treat with reports from the Auditor General's Department. She was saying that depending on which section of the Financial Administration and Audit Act the report is sent to Parliament under, I will take such reports and either table them immediately, i.e. they become public immediately, or I will send them to the minister in charge of the portfolio, which has been reported on by the Auditor General Department, for that minister to then take some time, up to 2 months, to go through the report, then address issues in it. It is only after the report has been considered by the responsible minister for 2 months, it is only after that that report can then be tabled in Parliament and become public. Cue the accusations that that was a tactic to hide, a tactic to obfuscate, a tactic to hide from the Jamaican people the true state of the agencies, the public bodies under the thumb of the Auditor General. So the advice has been shared by the House Speaker about what informed that original decision from her. So I'd say to you now, Mr. Dalling, given what the Auditor General, what the Attorney General has said, given what the Legislative Council has said, was Mrs. Holness right in how she prescribed that reports from the Auditor General be treated?
Not only was she right, but she was following the law to the T.
Explain.
This is a teaching moment for me in terms of what has been happening in the Parliament. And it's actually a classic example that I'd use on an exam to test students' ability to do proper statutory interpretation.
All right.
So the first place I go is the Constitution. And the Constitution gives the Auditor General, under Section 122, the power to audit the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, the Clerk of the Senate, the Clerk of the Houses of Parliament, the accounts of all departments. And here is where the crux of the matter falls for most persons in their misunderstanding. All departments, I'll come to that.
Yes.
And the offices of government, including the Cabinet, the Judicial Services Commission, Public Service Police Services Commission, excluding the Auditor General Department. But it is all departments of government that persons have a general misunderstanding of. A public body is not a department of government.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court and other courts in the island have ruled on that matter.
Yes.
But many persons within the central government of Jamaica refer to even public bodies as departments.
Yes.
So it creates a little
for
confusion.
ease of communication.
For ease of communication. Many of them refer to public bodies as departments.
Yes.
So that if you refer to a public body as a department and you read the Constitution, you will believe that when it says the accounts of all departments, you'll also believe it is a public body.
Yes.
It is referring to. It's not. In fact, subsection 5 of the said section given the Auditor General the power says, nothing in this section shall prevent the performance by the Auditor General of such other function in relation to accounts of Government of Jamaica and accounts of other public authority and other public administrating, other bodies administering public funds that are prescribed by law. So subsection 5 extends the Auditor General powers to audit other bodies, but it must be prescribed by law. It says it here in the Constitution, prescribed by law. So then, when it comes to other bodies now and authorities, which are the public bodies, you go to law to see what the law says in prescribing such function.
Which is how the public bodies, the PBMI Act comes into play.
That is correct. And I'll help you with that in terms of the Public Bodies Management Act, the function of the Auditor General as stated in that, as well as I'll go directly now to the Financial Administration and Audit Act.
Hold it right there. Let's take the break and come right back. We have one segment to go and we have a lot to stuff into it. So let's take the break here on Lead Story and come back with more.
No more fear of missing out. CVM TV News is on YouTube. Get up-to-date news, sports, and business content at CVM TV News anytime, anywhere. Subscribe now to CVM TV News to see it happen.
We're in Portland today. I'm trying to find Mac's funeral home. Tavio! I'm trying to find Tavia. She's, I think, a mortician from a funeral home.
This is her.
No, ma'am, I'm looking for a mortician.
This is her.
All right.
The owner, mortician, embalmer, restorative artist.
Not to lie. Why you have me say the RIP sign right there? I mean, I say, no. I say, Lord, cover me.
Back with us on lead story, attorney at law and lecturer in constitution and statutory interpretation, Shane Dalling says a large part of the confusion over how the House Speaker has chosen to treat with reports sent to Parliament by the Auditor General's Department rests in the confusion that people have when talking about public bodies, public authorities and ministries, departments and agencies. He says there are clear distinctions, and a public body is different from a department or an agency of a ministry. And he says that in that confusion, people, including some who mean well, have garbled the narrative around the Speaker's treatment of these reports from the Auditor General's Department. So you are saying now that because of that, the PBMA Act, the Public Bodies Management Act,
Public Bodies Management and Accountability
Act comes into play.
Yes.
Pick up from there.
But before I get to the PBMA,
yes,
the Financial Administration and Audit Act,
the FAA,
was passed in 1959.
Yes.
That is pre-independence.
Yes.
And the legislation sets out the functions of the Auditor General. And it tells you that, that when the Auditor General completes her report, the Auditor General is required under Section 29, I'm staying specifically to 29, is required to submit an annual report to the Speaker of the House no later than the 31st of December following the end of the financial year here,
yes,
after examination, to the Speaker.
Yes.
Subsection 2 says, the Auditor General shall address to the Speaker, who shall lay the report before the House as soon as it is received.
Yes. That's where annual reports are concerned.
That is where annual reports are concerned. Mm-hmm. The matter of the Auditor General conducting a special report is also provided under Section 29, which says that the Auditor General may at any time that it appears desirable prepare a special report incidental to its function and send it to the Speaker.
Yes.
And that report must also be tabled as soon as possible.
Yes.
So one must ask themselves, what reports are we talking about? Reports of government bodies and departments under Section 122(1) of the Constitution or 122 subsection 5 of the Constitution?
Yes.
So, for avoidance of confusion, Section 30 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act says, and it is so specific that I'm a little at odds as to why persons are confused. Mm-hmm. Because it says, at the side notes, which is a guiding part of a legislation to help with the interpretation of the legislation, it says that the side notes, audit of accounts of public body by the Auditor General.
Yes.
So if the legislators were speaking about public bodies in Section 29, why does it repeat at 30?
Yes.
Audit of public bodies by the Auditor General. Yes. Then what audit was it talking about in 29?
If it's one and the same, why make the distinction then?
Why then make the distinction clear to say audit of public bodies by the Auditor General? Then which audit were we talking about? If it includes public body in 29, why you mention it specifically in 30?
Section 30.
Now let me guide you, George. You have conflicting provisions in legislations in Jamaica and across the world. We are taught how to navigate those conflicts where they exist. Mm-hmm. There's a principle and rule that helps us to navigate that. One of the principles I'll tell you is one, I'll use the Latin phrase, generalia specialibus non derogant.
Yes.
It's a Latin phrase. It means general words in a legislation should not derogate from specifics.
Yes.
Now, where Section 30 says, at the side note, specifics, audit of public bodies by the Auditor General, it means that Parliament is telling you that Section 30 is specific to public bodies, and the 29 is general. Therefore, you cannot use 29 to derogate from the specifics of 30. That's the principle in statutory interpretation. So when you find something seemingly confusing, you have to apply those principles to guide you, to assist you. I'll go further to bolster my point. Parliament later passed a legislation called the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, which is specific to public bodies. Now, when Parliament passed that, that was in 2001, years later. And Parliament says, again, at Section 13A of the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, which is specific to public bodies, it says, audit of accounts of public bodies by the Auditor General. And it repeats the procedure that it requires such reports to take to enter Parliament. And let me explain now. It says when the Auditor General audits a public body, first the Auditor General ought to send the report to the Minister. So Section 30 of FAA tells you she has to send it to the Minister. The legislation passed years later by this very Parliament. Section 13A, dealing specifically now with all public bodies, states that the report of the Auditor General on public bodies must be sent directly to the Minister. And then the Minister has 2 months in which he must bring the report to Parliament. And if he fails to do so, the Auditor General must now submit the report to the Speaker, and she should table the report.
Hear you on that loud and clear. We're at the end. We hope that we nailed it in the time we had. We hope that your understanding has increased. So my perspective is this: because of the specific designation of public bodies and how reports on public bodies are different from annual reports prepared by the Auditor General's Department, then what the Speaker has chosen to do in saying, well, for the annual reports, you send them and I'll table them immediately. But for special reports on public bodies, the legislation says that you are to send those to the responsible minister, and then the 2-month period kicks in for them to send it back to Parliament. If not, you can send it to me and I'll table it. It is in keeping with the legislation, and I can't see the variance or the dissonance in the guidance that she has been given with what has subsequently been done by her. But as I've said at the top, the opinions continue to differ, dueling opinions like dueling dragons, and one would have thought that the publication of the guidance would have settled this